Welcome to Ford High School Weekly. I'm your host, Deon Amade. Tulsa Public Schools Athletic Director Gil Cloud is retiring at the end of the school year. We got together to talk about his career in athletics. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's an honor to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to represent the school district and beyond, especially on your particular show, because I do watch it every week.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Now, 51 years of experience. Tell me, how has it been thus far?
You know, I tell you what, it's been a real trip. I started out in a 2A high school in southeast Kansas. 3 years later, I was coaching in the Big 8 at Kansas State. I've coached small college. I coached high school. 3 or 4 years, the head football coach at McAllister High School. And then in 1976, Wesley Jarman was the superintendent at Union, and he offered me the athletics director's job there. And I must be very honest, when I took the job, people said, "You're committing career suicide." They haven't won in any level. They've moved up into the highest class of the smallest school, and they're not going. I spent 15 years there. We won 30 state championships, and then I went on to Guthrie for 3 years, and then I went back into college business, for the next 20 years at 3 different institutions as a director of athletics. So it's been fun, and of course, this last 9 years at TPS really kind of is a great way for me to finish my career. I moved to Tulsa in 1962 and went to Will Rogers High School, played football and baseball, and to be able to end up in Tulsa Public Schools in my career, I think is really special to me.
Man, you've been all over the map over here in this region, talking about Kansas and the Big 8 and now in Tulsa Public School. I got so many questions, but let's go ahead and start it off from the very beginning for you. Playing sports as a kid, you mentioned that you played football and baseball. Which one of those were your favorites? Which one you kind of gravitated more to?
Well, I ended up playing football in college. I think that was one of the things that I always wanted to do. As a caveat to that, though, the first 10 years of my education was in Louisville, Kentucky. And actually, I had already gotten recruiting letters as a sophomore in high school for ice hockey. I was a goaltender.
Ice hockey?
Yes. And then my dad worked for Williams, and we got transferred to Tulsa. And that was the couple of years that I was in high school. There was no ice hockey. The Oilers had not started up yet, and I go off to college, and then they start ice hockey again. But I really enjoyed being able to play college football. I ended up my career. I signed with Oklahoma, but I ended up at the University of New Mexico, and then came back and finished my degree at the University of Tulsa, and then got into this crazy coaching business.
Coming out of Will Rogers High School, Gil was recruited by Sooner legend Bud Wilkinson. He'll tell us about that and some of his experiences as a college football recruiter coming up next on Ford High School Weekly. Welcome back to Ford High School Weekly. We're talking with Tulsa Public School Athletic Director Gil Cloud. So tell me about recruiting back in those days. I mean, we talk to kids every week and we ask them the question, because I mean, everybody loves to hear about those stories and how it went for you. But back in those days, how was recruiting and how did you end up signing with Oklahoma?
Well, it was one of those things where, you start getting letters from different schools and so on and so forth. And we were pretty good at Rogers at the time. So we had a lot of guys that were being recruited, and it was a tremendous. As I grew up, my mother had graduated from Oklahoma in the School of Nursing. And so, this is a trivia question probably for some people. The first coach to have a coaches show was Bud Wilkinson, and Kerr McGee was the sponsor, and Newman was the talent. And I watched that in Kentucky growing up. Bud Wilkinson, golly. Well, we come to Oklahoma, and I started being recruited by Oklahoma State, Kansas, and Arkansas. And so Bud Wilkinson's all I knew. I grew up watching Bud Wilkinson on Sunday afternoon with Howard Newman. And so a great recruiting story about that. We go down and there's about 50 of us for an unofficial visit on game day. They're playing Kansas. Gail Sayers is playing for Kansas. And so
wow.
They have us in the dressing room and we're sitting down in front of these cubicles, which was the freshman dressing room. And Coach Wilkinson comes in and every single recruit, he knows their first name. And I'm thinking, how in the world? This is Bud Wilkinson. How does he know that? Well, let me fast forward. So I go in my career and end up coaching at Kansas State University, and we're playing Oklahoma. And one of the coaches that had recruited me was Leon Cross. And Leon Cross was in the press box that day. I was a press box coach that day. And I run into him in the hallway, and I said, Coach, I tell you what, it's great to see you. But there's one question about recruiting. I just can't, I don't understand how Coach Wilkinson would know every one of those 50 kids' first names. And he said, oh, Coach, he said, there's nothing to it. We sat you down in front of a cubicle. In the back of that cubicle, it had your name.
Trade secrets that
so
the coaches.
Recruiting is recruiting. It doesn't make any difference. And but when I was recruiting at K-State, we didn't have near the rules that they have today. The first kid I ever signed was in Coffeyville, Kansas, Coffeyville Community College. And they gave me Coffeyville because I'd been the head football coach at Coffeyville High School. And his name was Les Shaves, a tremendous athlete from Junction City, Kansas. And me and a guy by the name of Kent Stevenson, who was an assistant coach at Oklahoma State, spent 5 days taking Les to breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's when we could have unlimited contact. And so
5 days?
Yeah, we just camped out in Coffeyville. We met him at 7 o'clock in the morning, walk him, both of us, one on either side of us, Oklahoma State and K-State on either side. And on signing day, I lose him. I can't find him. And the last thing Coach Gibson, Vince Gibson was our head coach, the last thing he told me was, don't come back unless you sign him. And I'm thinking, well, I'm 70 miles from Tulsa. I might just call my wife and tell her we're going back home because I've been fired. I find him, get him signed, and that was my very first one. But
where was he?
He had been hid out at an Oklahoma State alum who I thought was a friend of mine, had been our team doctor when I was the head coach at the high school. Yeah. But his undergraduate work was at Oklahoma State. And they had him hid out. I found that out in the afternoon. And Chuck Ninus was the commissioner of the Big 8 at that time. I told him, I said, I'll tell you what, I've called Coach Gibson. He's called Chuck Ninus. And Oklahoma State's going to be on double secret probation forever if that kid doesn't show up at Memorial Gymnasium in 30 minutes. And in 25 minutes, he showed up.
Well, good thing he showed up, because if he didn't show up, I might not have been able to play at Oklahoma State.
There you go. There you go.
We love talking about recruiting on Ford High School Weekly. Gil Cloud talks to us about the 4 most important things for recruits to think about when they're choosing a college. Ford High School Weekly continues after this break. Welcome back to Ford High School Weekly. We're talking with Tulsa Public School Athletic Director, Gil Cloud. What was the difference in your mind of being a recruiter at one point and getting recruited? What was the big difference that you saw, that you noticed, that you're just like, man, I just didn't know it was like this for the coaching side of things?
The multitasking, I think, that you have to do. And one of the things that Coach Gibson always told us was you need to find out who's going to make the decision. Mm-hmm. In some cases, it's the student athlete. Some cases, it's the mother, the father, the grandmother, the aunt, the uncle. And so you have to end up recruiting those people just as hard as you recruit the kid, because that's the person who's going to have that kid to go where they want them to go to. And so you when you come in, you need to find out who's the decision maker and who's going to have an effect on that youngster when you get ready. When I was in the college business as a director of athletics, they used to have me there on Sunday morning, to give we're committed to the program and everything after they had the recruits for their official visit. And I told them there's 4 things that you need to decide where you're going to school. The first thing is, do we have the course of study that you want to matriculate in? Because if that's not there, then you're wasting your time academically and wasting our time. The second thing is this weekend, did you enjoy the student athletes that you stayed with for these 2 days? Because these are going to be your brothers or sisters for the next 4 years, and you need to make sure that you like those people. The third thing is, how far away from home do you want to be? Some kids don't care. They can be across the country, and some kids don't want to be more than 15 minutes away from home. And the last thing you pick is who the coach is. Because coaches are here today and gone tomorrow. Now, my coaches didn't like them to tell them that, but I always felt like it was very important to be honest with them, about those 4 things can determine where you need to go. So as a coach, I always recruited that way. I said, what do you want to major in? And that's really, really important, because if we don't have what you want, then we're wasting time and you're wasting time. And we want people that will be there on task, both academically and athletically.
Yeah, that's the way to go about it. It's one of the things that I don't think is educated enough to student athletes, because for the fact of the matter is, it's a small select group of individuals that's going to be able to, pick where they want to go and get recruited to as many schools as, some of the best athletes do. And so when you get to that point, or you reach that point in your athletic career where you're like, you're going to be a D1 athlete, now you need to decide these schools by these criterias. And so it's very important to educate those kids. And I'm glad that you're saying that right now, so they're listening, and so that they know this.
We tell our coaches that, I meet with our athletic directors every month, and we want not to be micromanaging their programs, but we certainly want to help their student athletes, because it's really, really important. I think for the decision that these kids make on where they go to school, education will change your life.
Yeah.
If you get your education, they can't take that away from you. You always got that. So you need to make the right choices. And, there's a lot of things in athletics today at the collegiate level that I do not like. I do not like the one and done. I think that is absolutely an abomination to education, and to call those people student athletes. They're not. They're athlete students. If they know they're coming to be one and done, and I think that, really, until we get, I always like the baseball model. The baseball model is that if you go
3 years,
if you go out of high school, you can go. If you go to junior college, you got to go 2 years.
Yep.
And if you go to a 4-year school, you got to go 3. And let's do it that way, because at least you get some education while you're there. We have guys, these one and dones, they barely get 12 hours.
Yeah.
And because that second semester, they're not going to class. They're playing in the Final Four. I always thought that was an interesting thing. We had the presidents of these universities saying that, we can't have a football playoff because it takes them out of school too much. My gosh, we take 68 teams out of school to start with, and they leave on Tuesday to play on Thursday and Saturday, or Friday and Sunday. And so, my goodness, you know what the real reason is? I'll tell you the real reason is because the way the bylaws are written in the NCAA journals, all championship money goes into the NCAA. Well, you notice that the football is not an NCAA Division I championship. It's not.
Yeah, they normally call it either the BCS or outside the fact.
And the BCS is totally separate from the NCAA, but that way they don't have to share any of that money with the NCAA. Everything else goes in that way. And so I always thought that was interesting, that we can't miss too much class, but we can take those basketball teams out for 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah, because that with that tournament, it's the NCAA tournament. That's their biggest revenue source. Absolutely. So they have to play that tournament.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So with that being said, now that you're an individual who's well versed on the college level and the high school level, what's the biggest difference that you've seen on the education forefront as far as high school and college collegiately in your position?
I think that we've always emphasized, to me, education is why I was in this business. If I didn't want to be a teacher and coach, I wouldn't have gotten in this business to start. When you get into administration, this is my 44th year as an athletic director. My job is to teach the ADs, who teach the coaches, who teach the kids, and communication is critical. So education, I think, needs to be first and foremost. I spent 20 years in Division II, And I got to tell you, I think Division II is a great level of NCAA athletics because the vast majority of our student athletes are not going to play in the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball. They're going to get a degree and go out and be successful citizens. So the balance of athletics and academics is pretty good in Division II. You get Division I, and there are those who are student athletes. They want to be there for the right reasons, but there's a lot of them that are looking, what's going to be my draft position?
Yeah.
You know, where can I go to get drafted as high? And I don't blame anybody. If you've got that talent, I think that's important that you manifest that talent while you have that opportunity, because the other part of that is that's a very short time in the overall aspect of your life. Mm-hmm. You've got about 10 to 15 years, and then you're going to be done, period. And so that education that you didn't get if you were at the university and went out early will pay dividends in the long run if you get that education, as opposed to not getting it. So to me, I think it is a little bit of a misnomer. I hear these people all the time belittling the phrase student athlete. I've always used that phrase at the high school level, the collegiate level, because that is in fact our focus. We have mandatory study hall for our student athletes that aren't matriculating every week to be eligible at each of our schools. We think it's important that we did that. When I was in the Division II business down at Northeastern as a director, we started every incoming freshman and every transfer had to do a study profile to see how they studied the best, because not everybody studies the same. Those things are really, really important. So the academic part of this thing has got to be first and foremost, and then athletics comes second.
We're going to talk about the other kind of football in our next segment. We have soccer highlights from the Ford Game of the Week coming up next on Ford High School Weekly. Welcome back to Ford High School Weekly. Next Tuesday night at 6 on the Ford Game of the Week, check out Union at Broken Arrow. That will be a girls and boys soccer doubleheader right here on Cox YurView Channel 3. Last week, Southmore and nationally ranked Mustang met on a windy evening at Southmore High School.
This is how the girls' game started, Coach.
Well, here's the opening shot, and again, I think if you can keep it on target, you've got half a chance with this, with the weight conditions were this evening, and it was a good strike. And another thing that helped them really quite a lot was early in the game, and Southmore were always chasing the game. And here's the second goal, which again was well maneuvered. They get a great look on goal, and there's that follow-up to make it 2-0.
So that was the halftime score, and Mustang was able to come out and get another goal, make it a 3-0 contest.
Yeah, and I think when you're chasing the game, when you're 2-0 down and you have a wind advantage, and that's the pass we were talking about earlier, you're always going to be susceptible to the counterattack, and this was a classic counterattack. So full marks to Mustang. I think on the evening deserved their win.
Last goal there scored by Kyrie Soto, and the assist went to Lovelace as, again, the victory for Southmore. Here's another goal that the Lady Sabercats were able to get on the board late.
Yeah, again, and it's a brave header. I mean, she must know that she's going to get hit, but just sacrifices and puts it on the line.
Here's a look at your final numbers on the night. The shots on goal did even up some, as we suspected, after Southmore was unable to get a shot on goal in that entire first half. But again, the wind advantage was certainly well defined here this evening. Mustang with 13 shots on goal. They ended up with a pretty even number of free kicks there, the corner kicks and the fouls as you take a look. And there's a look at the individual goals that were scored, the 3 for Mustang and the 1 for Southmore. So 3-1 our final score in game 1 of our doubleheader here tonight on your Oklahoma Ford Dealers Game of the Week. Let's get it started here on the...
Well, this was the opening goal by Southmore, and again it came from a set piece from the throw-in, and again failure to clear, and you've got to really admire the aggressiveness of people getting after the ball. But within 40 seconds, there was the answer from Mustang. Handball in the penalty area, and it's a penalty kick, and well converted. Puts the ball to the goalkeeper's right. Here we see it again, the little skip before he strikes the ball, which made it 1-1. And then going into the second half again, we look at another penalty, which was converted by Silver again. Makes the score 2-1 very early in the second half. Help them settle down a little bit, relax, and as Coach said earlier, play their game. Corner kick, far post, goes back to the near post, and very well taken out of the air. That's a difficult skill.
Parker Arnold with the goal on that particular one, as they were able to get the timely goal. They get one more look at it. Header and then fire it back in. And the big goal there for Parker Arnold as Mustang rolls on to the victory, winning it by a final score of 4-1 tonight here at Southmore. And then here's Silva once again, as we have seen with the goal, and that one pretty much put it away for Mustang here tonight as they win it by a final score of 4-1. There's a look at your statistics on the contest. Broncos had 4 more shots on goal, or 2 more shots on goal, 4 more shots actually. Corner kicks, they had a big advantage there, and they win it tonight by a final score of 4-1.
Man, when the wind comes sweeping down the plain, soccer can be a real challenge. Good job by the folks at Mustang and Southmore for battling through the conditions.
3 seconds, 2 seconds at the buzzer on the way, and it's good.
Be sure to go to YurView.com/OK for highlights and replays of the Ford Game of the Week. Check out our podcast from past episodes at YurView.com/OK. Join us next week for more with TPS AD Gil Cloud. Remember, only the best in Oklahoma make the Ford High School Week. So thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm your host, Dion Amata.